So remember when Alienware made those computers like 2015-ish that were supposed to be teamed up with Steam and come with Steam OS installed, and that just didn't happen. It was pretty much just Windows 8.1, and their hardware was really underwhelming, and they didn't sell very well. I love those. I really like those. When I was a kid, I was a teenager at the time, about 14, 15 years old. I had never had a gaming PC before. I really wanted to play Payday 2, not on console, because they just kind of forgot that the console versions existed. So I really wanted an Alienware Alpha so I could do the Go Bank heist or the Goat Simulator heist. Nevertheless, I always wanted one. And I'm 25 now, and I still really want one, even though the hardware is abysmal. So, we're gonna build one, but make it good. Here's the plan. I'm gonna take an old broken Alienware Alpha that I find on eBay. I'm gonna take out all the insides, hopefully not change anything. I don't want to permanently frick it up. My requirements for the project. It has to be on its own, faster, more powerful, more capable than a Steam Deck. While I love the Steam Deck, I'm about to show y'all what the better Steam console was. It also has to have the capability to hook up to an eGPU. Whether it's Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 5 would actually be freaking crazy, or Oculink. I don't even think they make Thunderbolt 5 eGPUs yet, but we're getting ready for the future in here. Alright, that's the project. Let's go to eBay. Let's do it. Bye. Alright, so we're looking at eBay. We want a broken one. This one works. I want a broken one. Broken. This looks like a good one. Alright, we're buying it. My Alpha arrived and I was ready to get to work. Now my initial plan was to build using a mini ITX board and a Pico PSU, but I ran into a few problems. So the first problem is that the connectors to the power button and the LEDs are proprietary, so I wouldn't be able to plug them into a normal motherboard. I also noticed that while the I/O shield on the cage was removable, the one on the shell was not, so I was going to have to cut that off and make a custom backplate. And the biggest problem is that the case is just a little too small to fit an ITX board in it without changing the size of the case, which I didn't want to do. So here's the problem. I came into this with a few options. I could have either built an ITX build inside of it and done like an NVMe to Oculink connection to be able to connect an eGPU, but I can't do that because the enclosure is too small. I also could have taken the board out of a broken ROG Ally or a Steam Deck and done that instead, but that seemed kind of stupid. So what I landed on is I'm going to take one of those cheap mini PCs and take the board out of it, get one with Oculink support, and then just route all the I/O to the front and back. Naturally, since that's the stupidest option, that's the one I'm going to go with today. Okay, so the first step is going to be to tear down the Alpha to its bare cage and take some measurements for designing a plate that we can mount all of our components to. This is basically it. This is the cage. I got to design a plate that'll mount up to this, and then we can mount stuff to that. Okay, we bought stuff. And yes, I found my pop filter. Now, I ordered the mini PC from China, so that's probably not going to be here for like a year. But in the meantime, we ordered a bunch of connectors. So we got some USB 3.0 extensions. That's for connecting up the front I/O to the back and the front of the case. We also got a Thunderbolt 4 extension, an USB 3 hub to expand the ports, because there's not a lot of ports on the PC itself. We also got some LED strips, because there ain't no way in hell I'm going to make a custom connector. So I'm just going to put some strips in there and hook it up via USB. I also modeled up a little thing for the holes in the case to mount up to, and a triangle. This is going to be for the Steam logo that we're going to put on. But yeah, now we wait. So while we wait for the computer to show up, we got to figure out a way to get all this stuff mounted. So let's start with the LEDs. Since I don't really have a way of hooking up the connectors for the power button or for the LEDs on the triangle part, I have to figure out another way to get those parts working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an LED strip, and that's powered off a USB. Okay, so there's 3 LEDs on this thing, and 3 on this thing. I'm trying to put the LEDs around where they are on the components themselves. I use some scotch tape to help me temporarily put them where they need to go, and then I use the adhesive strip on the back to get them permanently attached. What I'm left with looks pretty close to stock and achieves the effect that I'm going for. Alright, so it turns out you're not supposed to bend LED strips like that, so we're going to do a new one, but we're just going to make it straight. Okay? Alright, we're gluing stuff. Now it's time to mount the USB hub, the LED controller, and the cable extensions for the front I/O. I designed a bracket to hold the front I/O in place, and I hot glued it in. I included a replica of the Steam logo piece to make it look like the original concept of the Alpha. I also made sure to put the sensor for the LEDs in a spot where it could detect the signal from the remote through the shell of the case. Okay, so this showed up way faster than I thought it would. It's also wrapped in like 1,000 layers of tape, so I don't know where to open it. Oh my god. I bought that shipping insurance, and they said we ain't risking a single chance that he submits a claim. Oh, okay. I spent a little while researching which PC I wanted to use for this, and I ended up going with this GMKTec NucBox K8 Plus. Here it is. This is the base of our new Alienware Alpha 2024. So we're gonna put 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM in here at 5600 megahertz. We're also gonna put a 1 terabyte NVMe drive in this. I don't have either of those things yet, so we're gonna look into mounting the board. First, we have to get the board out of the computer. Alright, I figured out how I want to mount it to the cage. We got our bracket printed out. In order for it to fit, I'm going to need to cut out a little piece of the bottom of the cage. And I don't really want to buy a Dremel, so I'm going to use some tin snips and hope that they work. So I used some duct tape to cover up the sharp edges, and I really hope that it can withstand the heat of the computer. I also wiped off all the metal shavings to make sure none of them got on the motherboard. And for a good fit, I had to cut some of the support pieces off the top and bottom shells so that everything would go together nicely. You know, I'd say that worked pretty well. We've got the PC mounted in here now, and the fan on the bottom is not blocked anymore. So now all that's left is to trim the I/O part off the back of the shell. Then we got to make a custom I/O shield. I also got to make a fan mount for the top fan. I don't know why I'm even putting it in. It's not going to get any air, but we're going to do it anyway. And then all we got to do besides put the RAM and SSD in, we just got to drill a little hole in the front of this to make a little piece that links up the two power buttons. And then this thing's going to be done. So let's get working on the I/O first, because I think that's going to be the hardest part.
Look at that hack job!
Okay, we got the I/O shield modeled up and made. Now we got to put it in. Hello, welcome to Noah Explains Stuff. So I basically designed a part that goes through the two holes that are already in the case, the shell, the metal part, the front of the metal thing, and it just slots right through and connects up to the power button. There's just enough play in it so that when you press the big plate that I put on the front of it, it presses the power button. Yeah, after installing that, all I had to do was install the RAM and the SSD. Then I had to put the Wi-Fi antenna in its spot. Then I covered up my hideous monstrosity of a back panel and did some testing. Alright, let's see if I broke it. Hello? Uh-oh. I see a light. So it looks like I did break it. Alright, what seems to be the problem, officer? None of the lights were turning on, and I was not getting video out. The LEDs aren't working. Oh, okay, so it just works now. I don't know why it wasn't working. So I looked at it, and the little connector strip thing for the LEDs got pinched in between the case and the cage, and it tore it. So I replaced it and reseated it in a spot that I don't think it will do that again. Alright, that's my last one, so please God don't break. So now that everything's buttoned up, it's time to put an operating system on this nightmare computer. I wanted the authentic Steam experience that the creators of the Alpha envisioned, so we're going to install Bazite. I went ahead and gave it a test run, and I'm happy to report that it handled everything I threw at it without any problems. Not to say that Super Meat Boy or Payday 2 are games that would give even the shittiest of shitboxes a hard time, but I'm confident I can push this thing a lot farther. I also tried out some PS2 emulation, and it was flawless. In the end, our new Super Alienware Alpha has an AMD Ryzen 7 8845HS with an AMD Radeon 780M iGPU, 32 gigs of RAM, a terabyte SSD, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth included, which are terrible. For the I/O, at the front we've got a Thunderbolt 4 port and a USB 3.2 port, and at the back we've got two USB 2 ports, a display port, an HDMI, dual gigabit LAN ports, another Thunderbolt 4, power, and in the future we're going to connect up the Oculink port and headphone jack to the back. Now, where's the Oculink port? There's actually only 2 Oculink extensions on Amazon, and they both have 1 star and 1 review, so I'm going to wait until there's an eGPU that I can actually test one with. Now, is our creation truly the better Steam machine? Let's compare to a Steam Deck. For the advantages, the Alpha has a more powerful processor and iGPU by any metric. It also has more RAM and storage and more I/O. The fact that it can support an eGPU over Oculink natively without having to use an M.2 slot is massive. And worth a trillion points, it's an Alienware Alpha, which is cool shit. Now for the drawbacks. It needs a bulky 120 watt power supply, so no power over USB-C. It's portable, but it takes up much more space by having to bring a controller and a portable screen than a Steam Deck would. There's also poor thermals due to bad airflow and a single fan.
Back with another milk.
The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are absolutely atrocious. It's probably the antenna, and not all the I/O is being utilized due to space limitations inside the case. There's also a bunch of design flaws on my part, like using delicate LED strips that break every time you touch them, and they also eat up a USB 3 port when there are available fan headers that I could just make a connector for. I'm also using hot glue everywhere because I'm too lazy to use real hardware, but most of these things can and will be improved in its next iteration. And getting to have a custom version of a computer that I wanted oh so badly when I was 15 is worth all the jank in the world to me. The end. So this might not have been the smartest way of doing this, admittedly, in hindsight, but I'd say it turned out pretty well. Now I know what you might be thinking. Noah, you took a perfectly good mini PC, made it bigger, voided your warranty, made it less practical, reduced the ports on it, reduced the thermal performance on it, and you shredded a perfectly good Alienware Alpha shell and cage in the process. I gotta say, that's true. It's all true. All of it. But now it's an Alienware Alpha. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the gaming performance out of it so far. I did not expect much. The bar was pretty low, but it definitely surpasses that of a Steam Deck just on its own. And that's without an eGPU. And maybe I'll make another one where I do smarter things if you're mean enough. There are a lot of things I would like to improve next time around. The thermal's got to be addressed like immediately, among other things. Anyway, I had a lot of fun making this. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. That's it. Thanks. Bye. Bye.